Yeah. Analytics off the chain, other channels not the same. Jake and Kyle, you know the name. Headliner Nation, we running the game. I'm a headliner.
What is going on, Headliner Nation? Jake, Fantasy Headliners. Hopefully everybody's doing well out there. Welcome to Week 7 here, Fantasy Football, where we're talking about them ball throwers. That's right. Who are we going to start instead of the quarterback position in Week 7 of Fantasy Football? And we have some studs on bye here in Week 7. I mean, we're hurting everywhere, right? If it's not injuries, it's bye weeks here. This week, we're going to be without the likes of Josh Allen, Dak Prescott, Kirk Cousins, Justin Herbert, because right now, you better believe I'm feeling fancy. It's just not a great week. However, there are some pretty good options here that we're going to take a look at in Week 7. However, before we dive into every matchup, every player here this week, how did we do last week in Week 6? And by the looks of it, we did pretty freaking awesome. Out of the 28 names we gave a start or sit designation to just last week, 21 of them are correct for an accuracy percentage of 75%. Some big name misses last week, right? Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert didn't help us out too much. And then on the hit side, Teddy Two Gloves out there dealing for the Denver Broncos, and Kirk Cousins, once again, a reliable, safe fantasy quarterback on a weekly basis in which he's not on bye, right? Like he is this week. But now before we dive into Week 7, I have to remind you guys about our giveaway here in October through Prize Picks. We're giving away a signed Christian McCaffrey jersey, a mystery pylon from Pristine Auction, a $50 Fanatics gift card, and a Manscaped Perfect Package 4.0, an entire bundle valued at over $300. And all you got to do is sign up for Prize Picks. Either head over to the app, download that app, or head to the link down below here, create a new account on Prize Picks, and use the referral code Headliners. You make that initial $20 deposit, we'll match your deposit all the way up to $100, and then you can make these bets with us all year long, where we continue to make money on a weekly basis. So make sure you sign up for that right now. You do not want to miss out on this huge giveaway. But let's dive in here to Week 7, and we're going to kick it off with Thursday Night Football, the Denver Broncos and Cleveland Browns. And one thing can be said here just to start off, whether you like the guy, whether you hate the guy, Baker Mayfield ain't no sissy. As of right now, he's playing with a completely torn labrum in his non-throwing shoulder. That just doesn't sound like it feels good. You know what I mean? There's a lot of things in life that you can think like, that feels really good. Never mind. Anyway, the last thing that you're thinking about is a torn labrum. Now, sure, it's in his non-throwing shoulder, which does help things. It means that he can continue to play, but he's going to play with pain. And every time he's sacked, every time he takes a hit on that shoulder, he's going to be feeling it, and it's not going to be feeling too great. But we weren't really starting Baker Mayfield when he was fully healthy, right? Now the offensive line is banged up. They missed, Jack Conklin, Jedrick Wills this past week. That's not going to bode well for his protection on a weekly basis. We know they're not going to have Nick Chubb or Kareem Hunt. That is a big loss. And then a matchup against the Denver Broncos, who allow right around 16 fantasy points per game. There's just too many variables here going against Baker Mayfield. He's going to remain a sit. As for Teddy Two Gloves, though, the reason I've liked him all year is he protects the ball. And we talk about that week after week, how he really goes out there and protects the football. He didn't protect it in Week 6, okay? He went out and had 3 interceptions and lost a fumble. He only had 1 turnover on the season coming into last week, so let's just file that away as like an anomaly, right? Something that's not going to happen here on a weekly basis, and the volume really helped him last week. He had the most pass attempts that he's had in a game so far this year with 49. Way better to throw against the Cleveland Browns than it is to run on them. Plus, Courtland Sutton's really starting to look like his old self. He's got options at all different levels. And for this week, for Teddy Two Gloves, finding himself in the start column again. Which takes us to Sunday football, the Washington football team, Green Bay Packers. And I don't know if you can see that. I don't know if Taylor's going to crop it out. The discount double suck it tour continues for Aaron out there in Green Bay, where he's absolutely lighting it up. Plus, we just found out last week that he owns the Chicago Bears. Well, that's cool. But honestly, I think he may own a little bit of Washington too, because over their last 5 meetings, he's averaging 317 yards passing and 2 touchdowns per game, hasn't thrown an interception since week 1, and has 2 rushing touchdowns now over the last 3 games. The Washington football team, they allow over 31 fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks, the most in the NFL. You're starting Aaron Rodgers here this week. As for Taylor Heinicke, I really want to, but his top weapons are just too hurt. I had the privilege of going to the game there in Washington last week, and I really watched Heinicke because he's somebody who has some fantasy potential. He just doesn't have the options right now. Curtis Samuel, we know he's perma hurt. Terry McLaurin, He's bothered right now. You can tell at certain times his concentration, his focus just wasn't there. Had a couple drops right in the breadbasket, and Terry just couldn't haul him in. Antonio Gibson, he's not 100% healthy. All we are seeing on a consistent basis from Taylor Heinicke is check down passes to J.D. McKissick, and that's not enough to really raise your fantasy ceiling where I want to start you on a weekly basis. Now, Green Bay allows only right around 16 fantasy points per game, so until we can see more healthy options there for Taylor Heinicke, he's going to remain in the sit column here this week. Out to Nashville for the Tennessee Titans, Kansas City Chiefs. And is it crazy to think that Patrick Mahomes already has more interceptions here in 2021 than he had the entire season of 2019 or the entire season of 2020? I mean, the guy's just turning the ball over a lot, but what has changed? Like, what happened to Patrick Mahomes? Honestly, in my opinion, he's just trying to force it too much. It's like he's trying to create the next top 10 play on SportsCenter instead of just taking the less sexy check down every once in a while to keep the chains moving. But am I worried about Patrick Mahomes? Not in fantasy football, I'm not, because he's still the overall quarterback one as of right now. The running game isn't bad with Darrell Williams. It's not CEH, but it's something that's still viable, and it's allowing the defense to creep in a little bit. And sure, they're still exploiting Tyreek Hill over the top and Travis Kelce. He's going to be fine going up against the Tennessee Titans. They allow over 20 fantasy points per game. Of course, you're starting Patrick Mahomes. As for Tanny, Ryan Tannehill of the Tennessee Titans, I want this to be the game. I really want to say fire up Ryan Tannehill in a game in which they may have to go back and forth. But no Julio Jones. Again, he's hurt. Again, nobody as of right now can stop Derrick Henry. I mean, he's basically going out there and having his will against any opposing defense as of right now. Ryan Tannehill hasn't thrown for 300 plus yards in the game since week 2. He only has one game all year in which he has more than one passing touchdown in the game. Now, Kansas City allows 26 fantasy points per game, second most in the NFL to opposing quarterbacks. It's just too risky of a start. They're so run heavy, limited weapons on the outside. It really took them a long time to get A.J. Brown going this past weekend. Now with no Julio Jones, do they just try to take away A.J., force Derrick Henry to beat him since he's probably going to anyway? That's kind of where I see this game going. I love Ryan Tannehill. I love the potential of him in this offense, but not this week. Now we go all the way down to Miami for the Dolphins and the Falcons. And has Tua turned the corner? Or did he just have a good game because he played the Jacksonville Jaguars and they really suck? Well, regardless, he did what he was supposed to do, right? He did the job that he was asked to do, and he looked pretty good doing it. He had 47 pass attempts. That's the most he's had in a game so far here this year, and I would really, really love for him to have a healthy Devontae Parker just to give him that added weapon in this offense. Sure, he's utilizing Mike Gesicki, and Jalen Waddle scored himself a couple touchdowns, but keep giving this kid some weapons. He's going to continue to put up some fantasy points. The run game right now, it's in shambles. They are not committed to nobody. There are some commitment issues in that backfield. I don't know what happened in the past with Brian Flores. Actually, I do know. He came from New England. Damn it. That's what it is right there. He just does not want to commit to a running back. He's got that Bill Belichick syndrome, and it's absolutely killing the running game. Now, going up against the Atlanta Falcons, they give up right around 17.5 fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks, so that's not bad, right? I do kind of expect in this game that Miami could be trailing and playing from behind. If that's the case, more garbage points, more fantasy points. I'm going to start Tua here this week, and the same goes for Matt Ryan. I'm going to start him here as well in week 7. Now we get Calvin Ridley back. He's back with the team. He reported to practice. A great matchup going up against the Miami Dolphins, who allow over 24 fantasy points per game. Third most. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to head over to Prize Picks right now, and I'm going to smash the over on Matt Ryan here this week at 270.5 passing yards on the day over on Prize Picks. But, you know, with the running game really more utilized as pass catchers with Mike Davis and Cordero Patterson, I really see the upside for Matt Ryan here this week, and he's going to be somebody that I don't mind starting here, especially with so many big names on bye. Now to New England for the Jets and the Patriots, and we've seen this before, right? I mean, these two rookie quarterbacks, Zach Wilson, Mac Jones, they just faced off against each other in week 2. And Bill Belichick absolutely tortured the rookie quarterback to the point where Zach Wilson threw 4 interceptions. Now we know all year long he struggled with interceptions, really struggled to find that touchdown upside. Only has 3 passing touchdowns in his last 4 games combined. He's going to stay in the sit column. As for Mac Jones, though, dude is like spaghetti with no sauce. So he's like plain noodles right now. I mean, it'll get you through, right? In a pinch, it'll get you through, but it just, you want that sauce. You want that flavor. And right now, there just ain't a whole lot of sauce. The ceiling is so low. The touchdowns, they just aren't there. And he's got more turnovers in the last 4 games than he has touchdowns. That's not what you want from your starting quarterback. Like I said, the ceiling is just so low. The Jets allow right around 15 fantasy points per game, which isn't bad against opposing quarterbacks. It's actually 3rd best in the NFL. So I'm not going to tempt it here with either one of these guys this week. Mac Jones also going to be a sit. Or the other New York team, the Giants, facing the Carolina Panthers here this week. And what has happened to Sam I Am? Sam Darnold is just struggling the past couple weeks. 4 interceptions over his last 2 games to only 2 total touchdowns. But what's more worrisome, last week, his completion percentage was 41%. That is not good, Sam. That is not the number that you want to have for your completion percentage. Carolina just really needs to start running the ball a little bit more, right? Chuba Hubbard hasn't been half bad in the backfield, and I think by running the ball even more on a consistent basis, regardless of the actual game streak, at least early in the games, to take some of that pressure off Sam Darnold is going to help immensely to make sure you can protect the ball a little bit more, try not to do too much with it, and really just keep the chains moving. In my opinion, Sam Darnold right now is just forcing the ball too much. Robbie Anderson isn't helping things because he's dropping too many passes as well. Now, the Giants right now allow right around 22 fantasy points per game, 6th most in the NFL. This is a very smart offensive game plan with Joe Brady, Matt Rule there in Carolina. I'm kind of looking for the bounce back here this week after a couple rough weeks. So honestly, this week, I think Sam Darnold has himself a great game. He's going to be a start. As for Daniel Jones, this team as a whole, they just can't catch a break, right? We know Kenny Golladay is hurt. And now Kadarius Toney, his injury could be serious is what we're hearing. This is no bueno. We already know that we have no Saquon Barkley. We lost Darius Slayton. Sterling Shepard had been out for times. Evan Ingram can't catch a pass unless hell is frozen over. I mean, it's just bad. You know what I mean? So overall, it's a solid defense they're going against as well in Carolina. Until there's more healthy weapons, I just can't trust Daniel Jones. He has 0 passing touchdowns in 3 of the last 4 games he's played. Let that sink in here just a little bit. He's going to be a sit for me here in week 7. Which takes us over to Baltimore for the Ravens and the Cincinnati Bengals, my Manscaped matchup of the week. Don't forget, guys, after this show is over, head over to manscaped.com. Get yourself something great for your travel bag. I took mine to DC with me, had it shoved full of all kinds of goodies. My balls were super fresh walking the streets of DC, I will tell you that. But you make sure you use that promo code Headliners at checkout. Want to make sure you get that 20% off and free shipping here right now. Get yourself something for the holidays. Some great products here coming out over the coming months. But I love this matchup. It's a battle of 2 top 12 fantasy quarterbacks in Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson. Now, as of right now, Joe Burrow is just tearing it up. He's had at least 2 touchdowns in every game so far this season. He's scored at least 20 fantasy points in 5 out of the 6 games he's played this year as well. Yeah, it really helps to have Jamar Chase. That guy is elite. As of right now, the Baltimore Ravens allow him right around 16 fantasy points per game, but you know what? I'll take that touchdown upside on a weekly basis and start myself some Joe Burrow. As for Lamar Jackson, you know you always start this guy. There isn't really a question whether or not you're going to start him. But the ceiling, it's actually starting to grow. And why is that? It's the return of Rashad Bateman. I mean, he's literally a thing. Maybe you forgot about the name because he was injured here to start the season, but this guy is really going to help take this offense to another level. An offense in which we're starting to see more deep plays down the field to Hollywood Brown. And now we get that consistency with the sure-handed Rashad Bateman. Plus, he's also capable of big plays, getting that 50-50 ball as well. Mark Andrews has things going, some big plays going on here in Baltimore. Plus, you also get like 5 points a week from just his rushing stats alone to really give him that safe floor. Now with that higher ceiling, absolutely love it. Now, Cincinnati, they're no pushover. They're allowing right around 15 fantasy points per game, 2nd fewest in the NFL, but it's Lamar Jackson. You don't sit him. Now out to Vegas for the Raiders and the Eagles. And how do I say this without pissing off everybody in Philadelphia? Because they get triggered super quick in Philadelphia. Let's blame the coach, because that's what always works in Philadelphia. Nick Sirianni. This dude is holding the offense back. He's totally clueless on how to use Jalen Hurts. Dude blows as of right now. He's just out there winging it, basically. There's too many forced throws deep down the field into coverage week in and week out. But a lot of people don't want to pay attention to that because they just see fantasy points, right? That's what a lot of people care about. And over the last 2 weeks, Jalen Hurts has scored 44 fantasy points. Pretty good. However, 31 of those 44 points have come on the ground. So if any team can lock him up on the ground, he's not going to help your fantasy team too much because there's too much inconsistency deep down the field. The Raiders, they allow right around 19 fantasy points per game. But like I said, you really need him to run the ball and find success. If he does struggle, if the Raiders were able to limit him on the ground or hold him out of the end zone, it could be bad. Come on, Nick. Get it together, Nick. We don't need deep balls down the field all the time. Some quick outs, some quick slants to Devontae Smith, to Jalen Reagor. Now you should get back Dallas Goedert, hopefully here this week. Find a way to make it happen, Nick. Keep it closer. Don't have everything forced down the field. But we're going to continue to start Jalen Hurts until teams, really figure him out. The fantasy points are there. The overall performance, though, oof. What about the Las Vegas Raiders? For Derek Carr, he had a great bounce back, especially post-Gruden, right? We didn't exactly know how he was going to play here after being affected by John Gruden. He was really close with Gruden. So now that we get to see him excel in this offense without John Gruden, love to see that, especially against the Denver Broncos. And the offense really in Las Vegas looked pretty free, right? Big playmakers. We got Bryan Edwards. We know Henry Ruggs is a big-time playmaker. We saw some big plays from Darren Balls to the Waller. There's touchdown upside on a weekly basis. And an inefficient run game, right? I mean, they're not really efficient on the ground at all. Whether it's Josh Jacobs or Kenyon Drake, they're looking for big chunk plays. Big plays equal more fantasy points. Right now, Philadelphia allows right around 19 fantasy points per game. I'm going to start me some Derek Carr. Now we go out to LA for the Rams and the Lions. And I really wanted to make this one my Manscaped matchup, but come on. It's Detroit. I mean, I can't make a team like Detroit in my Manscaped matchup of the week because it's Detroit. But you do have Jared Goff coming back to LA to face the Rams, and you do have Matthew Stafford going up against his former team in Detroit. And you know what? I love the sound of that. So I'm going to head over to Prize Picks and I'm going to smash the over on Matthew Stafford here this week at 285.5 passing yards. Yeah, with all the weapons he has going against his former team, I'm looking for Matthew Stafford to absolutely light it up. He's for sure going to be a start with all the weapons he's got. Goff, not so much. I mean, no, I just can't. I mean, both teams allow right around 19 fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks, but the ceiling just isn't there like it is for Matthew Stafford. I mean, who's this guy reliant on a weekly basis? Amon-Ra St. Brown, TJ Hawkinson, maybe, and we're hoping for that at best. DeAndre Swift at some points when they want to include him in the second half of the game. Goff hasn't thrown for a touchdown, though, in 2 weeks. That's a problem. He only has 2 touchdowns over his last 4 weeks combined. That's also a problem. There could be garbage points in this game. They could be trailing late. He could find some success late in that game, but that's okay. I'm not willing to risk it here this week. It's already a very risky week. You're probably already starting a lot of guys that you really don't want to start between injuries and bye weeks. I'm not willing to risk it anymore with Jared Goff here in week 7. Down in the desert now for the Houston Texans and Arizona Cardinals. And of course, it's a no-brainer. You're starting Kyler Murray on a weekly basis. Dude is quarterback 4 overall, leading one of the highest powered offenses in all of the land on a weekly basis there in Arizona. He's got a great wide receiver 2 option in AJ Green. We know about Christian Kirk and Rondale Moore, their ability to make big plays happen. And DeAndre Hopkins is the mainstay in this offense. Now they go up against the Houston Texans, who allow over 20 fantasy points per game. Not going to be any difference here. You're starting Kyler Murray and looking for another big game. But what about Davis Mills? No. Not going to happen. I will say this, though. I watched some film on this kid from last week, and honestly, he's progressing pretty well. The problem is he just doesn't have a whole lot of options in this offense. Brandon Cooks at times, Nico Collins could be there. But outside of that, he just needs more weapons, and unfortunately, he's not going to have it at any time here, at least with Houston here in the near future. Plus, this week, he gets to deal with a revenge game, right? You got DeAndre Hopkins out there. He's going to want to put up some points. And then you got J.J. Watt on the defensive line, who's going to want to make his presence felt there in the pass rush as well. Plus, do they get back Chandler Jones off the COVID reserve list? That's another big name that Davis Mills wants no part of here this week. The Arizona Cardinals allow right around 16 fantasy points per game. Too risky, not starting Davis Mills. Out to Tampa Bay for the Bucs and the Bears, and we know we start Tom Brady, right? He's the current NFL passing leader. He's only trailing Patrick Mahomes by 1 touchdown to have the league lead there. Only throwing 1 interception over the last 5 games, throwing the ball 40 times a game. Huge touchdown upside weekly. And the Bears allow over 17 fantasy points per game. Yeah, we're going to start Tom Brady. But what about Justin Fields and the Chicago Bears? I mean, this kid has shown flashes, right? But too many big mistakes on a weekly basis. It's like he has way too many brain farts. Too indecisive, too often. He's trying to make too much happen. He's not really out there playing and reacting based off of instinct. It's like he's trying to force things too much. Plus, maybe it's just me. But do me a favor, head out and check out some of his highlights from the recent weeks. Is it just me, or when you watch his throwing motion, does it just seem too long? It's like it takes him forever to get the ball up inside the throwing pocket and out. It's just too long of a motion. Honestly, it reminds me a lot of the critique that Tim Tebow used to get, right? It used to take him forever to get the ball up and out. Well, Justin Fields, to me, in my opinion, has some of those same traits. So that's something I'm going to definitely pay attention to here over the coming weeks. Now, a matchup going up against Tampa Bay, it is easier to throw on Tampa than it is to run on them. But too many inconsistencies for me to trust Justin Fields here just yet. The kid has talent, but I got to see some of these things get ironed out before I start throwing him in my fantasy lineup. He's going to be a sit. Out to San Francisco now for the 49ers and the Colts, and Carson Wentz is slowly returning to 2017 for him when he absolutely set the NFL on fire. Over the last 3 weeks combined, 6 touchdowns to no interceptions. He's spreading the ball around. He's protecting the ball, which is great. However, he's immobile as hell, right? The dude is not going to move much outside of the pocket, and that's okay, because he's excelling in the pocket right now. He's avoiding pressure, he's standing up, and he's delivering throws on time to his receivers. He's got the big play threats deep down the field. We saw that just last week from Paris Campbell. We see big plays on a weekly basis from Michael Pittman, right? There's options in this offense moving forward that can continue to keep that ceiling growing. Plus, the run game and Jonathan Taylor are opening up passing lanes all throughout the field, because now more defenders are forced to play one-on-one coverage because they're having to stack the boxes more. I like Carson Wentz. He's going to be a start here this week for the San Francisco 49ers. Looks like we're going back to Jimmy G because Trey Lance isn't even practicing yet, still dealing with that knee injury. But there's no George Kittle in this offense, and this offense is different without George Kittle there. Does that mean we see more Brandon Ayuk? Does it mean we continue to see a whole bunch of Deebo Samuel? I mean, I actually got an email from one of our viewers, longtime viewer here, one of the OG supporters to the channel. He recently won one of our Deebo Samuel autographs. He actually sent me a picture of it. I'll throw it up here on the screen just for a second. A lot of people loving themselves some Deebo Samuel because of his early season fantasy production. And honestly, I don't see that changing, especially here this week. A bad running game. Indianapolis allows right around 21 fantasy points per game, 9th most in the NFL. Maybe a lower ceiling, though, this week. He's only had 6 touchdowns in 4 games. I love the potential of individuals in this lineup. Now, a lot of people can say, Jake, how do you like Deebo Samuel this week, but you don't like Jimmy G as much? It's easy. Deebo can go out there and get 120 yards and a touchdown, have himself a great fantasy day. Ask yourself this. If Jimmy G gets 100 yards passing and a touchdown, are you happy with what? The 10 points that he got you? No, you're not too happy with that. So definitely you can have a good game from a receiver and not from a quarterback. I just don't see a high enough ceiling this week for Jimmy G, so he's going to be a sit. On to Monday Night Football then, Seattle Seahawks, New Orleans Saints. You remember this matchup was Drew Brees and Russell Wilson? Because that's not this matchup. Nope, we get Geno Smith and Jameis Winston this week. Yay. Looking forward to it. I mean, Jameis Winston, it really all depends which one shows up. The dude can go out and score 7 points and tank your fantasy team. He can then go out the next week and score 5 touchdowns, like 35 fantasy points, and carry you to victory. You just never know which one's going to show up. That's a huge gap. That's a lot of risk every single week. The question also comes in, does Michael Thomas return? If he's activated, how much does he play? How many snaps does he play? How many routes does he run? How utilized is he? Do they ease him back in slowly? A lot of questions, right? But this offense is solely based off of big plays. If Jameis Winston's scoring points, it's because they're getting deep plays down the field. If those deep plays aren't there, he's absolutely going to tank your team. That's where Michael Thomas could really come into play and take up a lot of that short to intermediate work and really make him a little bit safer on a weekly basis. We know the Seahawks allow right around 21 fantasy points per game. It's not a bad matchup for Jameis whatsoever. There's just a lot of risk. I'm going to list him as a start. However, when rankings come out here, closer to the end of the week, he's not going to be ranked very high. That just due to that risk, I don't have that warm fuzzy on the inside. As for Geno Smith and the Seattle Seahawks, I just can't, right? What is the ceiling for Geno this week? 225 yards passing, 1 touchdown, probably an interception as well. The run game there is demolished. Chris Carson, he's hurt. He's out. What about Alex Collins? He's already banged up. We're going to rely on DJ Dallas and Travis Homer. I mean, the defense of New Orleans can just key in on DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, take away the deep ball, and force, Geno to beat them, short to intermediate passes down the field and with the banged up running game. There's just too many question marks here. It's Geno Smith. I know you're probably not, itching at the opportunity to start him anyway. The Saints do allow right around 20 fantasy points per game, but at this point, this ain't it, and I'm not starting Geno Smith. All right, so those are my starts and sits for the quarterback position here, Week 7 fantasy football. Hopefully I was able to shed a little bit of light on a few of your players out there. Do not forget, though, get in on Prize Picks right now. There's a link down below in the description. Sign up, get yourself entered into that amazing October giveaway. Now, if you've signed up at all for Prize Picks and used the Headliners code throughout the year, you're eligible to win this giveaway, so don't give up hope. I'm looking forward to giving away that huge package of the CMC jersey, the Manscaped box, the mystery pylon, the $50 gift card to Fanatics.com. So much great stuff to give away here, and looking forward to doing that. So sign up now before it is too late. But hopefully you guys have a great rest of your day, a great week, and we'll talk to you later.